The world burned. The sky, once home to the bright blue expanse of human ambition, had become a churning storm of black smoke and neon fire. Warships loomed over the shattered cities like gods sculpted in metal, their glowing weapons carving craters into what little remained of Earth's defenses. The last battle was nearly over. Commander Reyna Voss crouched behind a crumbling barricade, her pulse hammering in her ears. The Zypherians had breached the final perimeter, and the screams of her dying comrades filled the air like a cruel symphony. Her armor, once pristine, was scorched and battered, her pulse rifles drained to their final charges. She wiped a streak of blood from her forehead and exhaled through gritted teeth. She had known this war was unwinnable. What she hadn't known was how bitter it would taste to witness humanity's last stand fall apart in real time. The enemy moved in with precision, their biomechanical forms gliding over the rubble. Their armor pulsed with eerie blue veins of energy, their multi-jointed limbs shifting unnaturally as they closed in. Reyna adjusted her grip on her weapons, leveling them at the nearest invader. One last fight, one last kill. If she was going down, she'd take as many of these bastards with her as she could. The first alien lunged. Reyna fired. The plasma bolt ripped through its skull, sending it toppling backward. Another fired a concussive blast in return, shattering the ground beneath her feet. She rolled, dodging just in time, feeling the heat sear past her armor. The moment she landed, she spun, firing 2 precise shots, one to the torso, one to the head. The Zypherian dropped, but more advanced. Too many. Her comm crackled. Commander, retreat, base compromised, fall back, static swallow the rest. It didn't matter. She had already made her choice. The resistance had fallen. The war was lost. She had to disappear. A cold detachment settled over her as she scanned her escape route. South, past the broken highway, toward the abandoned military facility she had passed weeks ago. It was risky, but staying meant certain death. She turned and ran, weaving through the wreckage as enemy fire followed her like the breath of death itself. The facility loomed ahead, half buried under the weight of a collapsed building. She pushed forward, forcing her burning legs to move faster, until she threw herself inside and sealed the entrance. Silence. She collapsed against the metal bulkhead, her chest rising and falling in rapid succession. Outside, she could hear the distant howls of the Zypherians, but for now, she was safe. Safe enough. The facility was ancient, its halls thick with dust and disuse. Emergency lights flickered dimly, casting eerie shadows across the broken consoles and shattered glass. As she moved deeper, her boots echoed through the emptiness, each step a whisper in the grave of a forgotten war. Then she found it. The room was sealed behind layers of reinforced steel, but the access panel still responded to her touch. The doors groaned open, revealing a laboratory untouched by time. Holographic schematics flickered to life, illuminating rows of blueprints and weapon designs never before seen on the battlefield. Her gaze locked onto one in particular, a synthesis system designed to merge multiple firearms into a singular, devastating weapon. Reyna stared, breathless. This was it. This was the game-changer humanity had needed, buried here beneath the bones of their past. She moved forward, hands gliding over the control panel as she activated the system. A soft hum filled the room. She scavenged through the bunker's armory, dragging out rifles, plasma launchers, and anything with firepower left in it. Piece by piece, she fed them into the machine, watching as the energy conduits flared to life, merging metal and circuitry into something entirely new. Sparks danced in the air. The room trembled. And then, as the final components locked into place, the weapon was born. It was a masterpiece of destruction, sleek, brutal, humming with raw power. She gripped it, feeling the weight of its purpose settle into her hands. A name formed in her mind. The Angel's Wrath. She almost laughed at how absurdly dramatic it sounded. Then again, what else could she call a gun forged from the desperate remains of a dying world? She lifted it, testing the weight, the feel, the sheer energy pulsing beneath her fingers. The ground trembled. Her head snapped up. They had found her. The first explosion rocked the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. She turned, weapon raised, just as the wall behind her erupted in a burst of molten debris. The Zypherians poured in, their glowing eyes locking onto her, their weapons raised. Reyna smirked. Bad timing, boys. She pulled the trigger. The gun roared to life, and the world exploded in light. The first Zypherian disintegrated on impact, its armor melting away like wax under a torch. The next barely had time to react before a second shot tore through its chest, leaving behind a smoking crater where its core had been. The weapon vibrated in her grip, the energy output unlike anything she had ever wielded before. She moved like a force of nature, weaving through enemy fire, each shot a symphony of carnage. The Zypherians, so used to cutting down humans like insects, faltered. For the first time, they were afraid. Reyna pressed forward, relentless, her boots crunching over scorched remains. She was no longer running, no longer hiding. The war had not ended. It had only just begun, and she was taking the fight to them. The night air reeked of ozone and burnt metal as Reyna stepped over the charred remains of the last Zypherian soldier. Smoke curled from the barrels of the Angel's Wrath, the gun's energy cores still pulsing with residual power. She exhaled slowly, forcing her racing heart to steady. The facility's entrance lay in ruins behind her, twisted steel and shattered concrete framing the battlefield like a monument to destruction. She had survived, but the battle was far from over. A sharp beep in her earpiece snapped her attention back to reality. The encrypted frequency flickered to life, and a voice, edged with urgency, crackled through the static. "Commander Voss, if you're still alive, respond. We've intercepted enemy chatter. Reinforcements en route to your position. You need to move." Reyna wiped the sweat and grime from her brow, gripping the weapon tighter. Reinforcements. Of course. The Zypherians wouldn't let this slide. She needed to disappear before they could bring their full force down on her. She turned, scanning the desolate landscape stretching beyond the ruined facility. The city ruins offered little cover, but the wreckage of fallen skyscrapers created a labyrinth of steel and stone, enough to buy her time if she moved quickly. She adjusted the straps on her armor, shifting the weight of her remaining supplies, and took off into the night. The silence felt unnatural. Even in the aftermath of battle, she had expected distant gunfire, the hum of Zypherian patrol ships prowling the skies. But there was nothing, no movement, no sound, just the wind whistling through the skeletal remains of humanity's lost empire. Reyna's gut twisted. Something was wrong. She ducked into the shell of a collapsed building, pressing herself against the cracked concrete. Her visor scanned the ruins ahead, searching for movement. Still nothing. But the feeling of being watched refused to fade. Then she heard it. A faint clicking noise, rhythmic and deliberate. Not from above. Not from behind. From below. She barely had time to move before the ground erupted. A monstrous shape burst through the concrete, sending shards of debris flying in all directions. Reyna threw herself sideways, rolling into a crouch as the thing emerged from the darkness. It was Zypherian, but unlike any she had seen before. Taller, its exoskeleton reinforced with thick, serrated plating. Its elongated limbs ended in cruel, bladed claws that gleamed under the moonlight. And its eyes, 7 of them, arranged in a twisted arc across its skull, burned with something she had never seen in their kind before. Malice. Reyna barely had time to react before it lunged. She fired, the Angel's Wrath releasing a deafening blast that struck the creature square in the chest. The impact sent it skidding backward, but it did not fall. Its armor smoldered, the energy blast leaving a deep scorch, but the creature remained standing. Worse, it was smiling. Reyna's breath hitched. "Oh, that's just unfair." The thing hissed, crouching lower, muscles tensing. It was toying with her, studying her. The realization sent a chill down her spine. She didn't wait for it to strike first. Her feet moved before her mind caught up, her body falling into the rhythm of combat. She strafed left, firing a rapid succession of shots, each impact shaking the night. The creature dodged with unnatural agility, its movements too fast, too precise. It was adapting. Then it vanished. Reyna froze. One moment it was there. The next it was gone. No sound. No shadow. Just absence. Her instinct screamed. She whirled around just as the creature materialized behind her, claws arcing toward her skull. She barely managed to raise her weapon in time. The force of the strike sent her staggering, her armor screeching as metal met alien bone. Sparks rained down as the two clashed, the creature pressing forward, its strength immense. Reyna gritted her teeth, forcing her knee up into its torso. The impact was solid, enough to give her a fraction of space. She twisted, shifting her weight, and slammed the butt of the angel's wrath into its skull. The creature reeled, hissing in frustration. Reyna smirked. "Didn't like that, did you?" The thing snarled and lunged again. This time, she was ready. She dropped low, rolling beneath its swipe, and in the same motion pivoted on her heel. Her rifle came up, its energy core humming, and she squeezed the trigger. The blast struck the creature's side, ripping through its plated armor and sending it crashing into the rubble. Reyna didn't hesitate. She advanced, firing again, each shot carving deep wounds into its frame. The creature screeched, flailing as it struggled to rise. But this time it didn't. Breathing hard, Reyna stepped closer, keeping her weapon trained on it. The thing twitched its breath ragged, but those 7 eyes never left her. Even in its final moments, it watched. Then, to her horror, it grinned. The ground trembled. Reyna's stomach dropped. A deep, guttural sound filled the air, dozens of voices overlapping in a grotesque harmony. She turned her gaze upward, and her heart turned to ice. The rooftops, the alleys, the wreckage, they were everywhere. Dozens of them, watching, waiting. The realization hit her like a bullet. This hadn't been a hunt. It had been a test. And she had passed. The first creature let out a gurgling laugh before its body collapsed into dust. The others remained still, their eerie eyes glowing in the darkness. Then, as if answering some silent command, they melted back into the ruins, vanishing one by one. Reyna stood frozen, the weight of their presence lingering even after they were gone. Her grip tightened around the angel's wrath. They had let her go. For now. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to move. Standing around waiting for a second round wasn't an option. She had to keep going, had to find the resistance if there was anything left of it. As she moved through the ruins, the wind carried the faintest whisper, an echo of alien laughter drifting through the night. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay as Reyna navigated the ruins. Each step crunched against debris, echoing unnaturally in the hollow silence. The city's skeletal remains loomed around her, the broken structures standing as a grim testament to humanity's defeat. She kept her grip firm on the angel's wrath, her body moving on instinct, every sense tuned for the slightest shift in the shadows. The encounter with the Zypherian abomination still clawed at her thoughts. They had let her go, not out of mercy, but something worse. Amusement. The Resistance's last known coordinates were less than a mile ahead, nestled deep beneath the ruins of an old industrial complex. If they had survived, that was where they would be. If they hadn't, she was walking into a graveyard. She adjusted the frequency on her earpiece, trying once more. "This is Commander Voss. Any allied units, respond." Static. She swallowed, tightening her jaw. Then, a crackle, a faint, barely there voice. "Voss? That you?" Reyna's heart leapt. "I'm here." Status. The voice came clearer now, hoarse, exhausted. "Alive, but not for long. The bunker's compromised. We're running out of time." Reyna quickened her pace, vaulting over fallen beams and jagged wreckage. "Hold on. I'm close." A heavy pause. Then the voice returned grim. "You're walking into hell, Commander." Reyna exhaled, her breath misting in the cold night. Nothing new. She found the entrance half buried beneath rubble, its reinforced steel doors hanging ajar, twisted and broken. The inside smelled of blood and scorched metal. The flickering emergency lights painted the narrow corridors in erratic pulses of red and shadow. Bodies littered the floor, human and Zypherian alike. Signs of a brutal last stand. Reyna moved swiftly, stepping over fallen comrades, her stomach twisting at the sight of familiar faces. She had fought beside these people, watched them bleed, laugh, survive. And now they were nothing more than corpses in a forgotten ruin. She forced herself forward. Grief would have to wait. A figure stumbled into view ahead, weapon raised on instinct. Reyna reacted just as fast, rifle leveled. Then she saw the face. Garrick, the Resistance's last tactician. One of the few who had kept the fight alive even when all seemed lost. But now, his once proud frame was gaunt, his armor scorched, his eyes hollow with the weight of too many lost battles. He lowered his weapon first, exhaling sharply. Damn, you really don't die, do you? Reyna let out something between a scoff and a sigh. Not for lack of trying. His expression darkened. You shouldn't have come. Reyna gestured to the corpses around them. I could say the same to you. Garrick's jaw tightened. He turned, motioning for her to follow. Come on. If you're here, there's something you need to see. They wove through the ruins of the bunker, past shattered barricades and makeshift defenses that had failed spectacularly. What remained of the resistance was huddled in the deepest chamber. No more than a dozen fighters, wounded, exhausted, staring at her arrival with the same hollow disbelief. But it wasn't the people that caught Reyna's attention. It was what they had built. The room's center held a towering structure of weaponized steel and salvaged Zypherian tech. Wires snaked across the floor, leading to humming energy cores scavenged from fallen warships. At its heart, a crystalline sphere pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. Reyna's breath stalled. What the hell is this? Garrick rubbed a hand over his face, sighing. A mistake. A desperate one. She stepped closer, feeling the charge in the air. Explain. Garrick hesitated, then, voice low, he said, It's a bomb, Reyna. Silence settled between them, heavier than the ruins above. She turned to him, disbelieving. You built a bomb out of alien tech. Not just any alien tech. He gestured to the pulsing core. That's Zypherian subspace energy. You detonate this, it doesn't just take out a city. It fractures reality itself. We were going to use it on their stronghold. End the war in one move. He scoffed, shaking his head. But they knew. They came for it before we were ready. And now, Reyna felt the truth settle like ice in her bones. It's compromised. Garrick nodded. The implications hit her all at once. The Zypherians didn't want to destroy it. They want to take it, use it, twist humanity's last desperate act into something far worse. Reyna's mind raced. They had minutes, maybe less, before the enemy returned. And when they did, there would be no fighting them off. She turned to the surviving fighters. How much charge is left? A mechanic, young and bruised, swallowed hard. Enough. Reyna nodded. Garrick's expression darkened. You're thinking about detonating it here. She met his gaze. We can't let them have it. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. That blast will wipe this entire sector off the map. Reyna's grip tightened around her rifle. Better us than the whole planet. A beat passed. Then, Garrick gave a hollow chuckle. Hell of a way to go. Reyna allowed herself a faint smirk. I've had worse ideas. The team moved with practiced efficiency, setting the device's countdown. No hesitation. No second-guessing. They had all known, deep down, that this fight wouldn't end with a victory parade. As they worked, the air grew heavy. The same unnatural silence she had felt before. Then, the laughter. Low at first, then rising. Echoing from the walls, the shadows, the broken speakers lining the bunker's halls. Reyna's blood ran cold. They were already here. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped. The air itself seemed to pulse, reality shifting at the edges. And then, from the darkness, they stepped forward. The Zypherians. Not as soldiers, not as invaders, but as something else entirely. They didn't charge, didn't attack. They simply watched, as if they had already won. Garrick whispered, They're waiting. Reyna understood. They weren't here to stop them. They were here to see if humanity would do it themselves. The timer on the bomb ticked down. Reyna met their leader's eyes, those 7 glowing orbs filled with something beyond human comprehension. Pity? Amusement? It didn't matter. She turned back to Garrick. Get everyone out. He hesitated. She gave him a look. That's an order. Slowly, he nodded. The others began to move. Reyna stayed behind. The Zypherians watched. The timer hit 0, and the world burned.